I didn't know that he was into kickers.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about draft one year. We were preparing for a redraft league, and he was taking a look at what we're doing, and we talked about punting the kicker position. And he's like, no, man, that position matters. Like, you can actually put strategy behind that and win your league based on how you draft your kicker. And I was like, what are you talking about right now? What is this conversation? And he like fully believes, and we never got to get into his like whatever his algorithm was for how he decided it, but full belief in the kicker position, really being able to strategize behind it and understand where and how to use it, in one, in how you draft it, and two, how you like put trades together and build around it. I'm like, in a redraft league, I'm like, man, like what?
Who's trading for? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you've heard my opinion more than once that I just think kickers are a joke, but it's the lack of predictability that makes them just such nonsense.
That's his argument, though, is that, and I can't make the argument for him. Maybe we have him on as a guest one day to talk about this, but his argument is that it's not as unpredictable as you think it is. He's like, you can look at a team, read it by the team's offensive style, like how fast paced it is.
Probably I mean, I think one of the best stats I would guess is red zone efficiency.
Yeah, red zone efficiency.
If you have poor red zone efficiency, and everything else is good, then your kicker's probably going to do great.
You got high offensive stats with low touchdown numbers, and you're going to have someone that's kicking.
I think there's an argument somewhere for that, but I stand by the argument that kickers should not be in football or fantasy football. And
I guess, well, I was gonna say, I guess that's two different conversations, but you're saying not in fantasy football. But I think that it is two different conversations in that, like, is this a real football position? Like, that's one conversation, right? Which the world knows how you feel, Arlen, about that. Yeah. And then the second conversation is, okay, it's in football. It's not going away. It's here. So now that we understand that it's here, can we build strategy around it to make it worthwhile to utilize within the fantasy spectrum? Right?
Sure. Well, yeah, I think that's fair. I think tight end is, since it's in the plays, it's a similar position almost as kicker when it comes to fantasy and how predictable or not, or how rare or whatever. So there's arguments that I've heard that are solid well, if you get rid of kickers, you should get rid of tight ends, but the yardage doesn't disappear with a kicker. Am I saying that right? When a kicker kicks, you're not taking away from any other player. But when a tight end does his play, if you kick them out, you're taking away from the wide receiver. So where did that production go? So that's an argument for keeping a tight end in, and I don't see an argument for keeping a kicker in, I guess. But in the end, it does come down to preference, because at the end of the day, I don't play with IDP, and I feel that individual defensive players is something, but that's mostly because I'm scared of it. But I feel like that's one that's like, it should be included in fantasy more. I think there's
that's a whole nother part of my brain that I haven't even started using yet, for sure. But like, going into because when you think about the strategy of defensive players, like, is it more of a team defense structure, or is the defense designed to get these one or two playmakers a shot at the quarterback, right? Like, is this defense built around a ball hawk, or is this more of a zone coverage type defense? And like, how are we going to break that down? Or how do you, when you're drafting those positions, like it comes into a lot of different pieces that I'm not even sure I have the brain space for yet. But back to tight end. Or go ahead.
I was thinking that like that might be one of the league types that we've talked about it before, where we've sometimes just had an extra league just to test out things.
Right.
And I think that I want to do it one just to test out these individual, like one spot and maybe this is not the right way to do it, but it's like a super flex, or not super, a super defensive flex, where you can put any defensive player in it. It's just one spot, and people can get a cornerback, they can get defensive end, they can do whatever, but just to test it out and see, because I think it's gonna need. I don't know anybody that does it, like in my fantasy circle, so I think that people would need to dip their toes before they would get into it anyway. But I feel that it's a great. I mean, it's a big piece we're missing. I feel.
Yeah, it's a whole half of the game, right? Like there's a whole another. We're literally playing 50% of the game. In the fantasy world, right? Like we're only playing half. You can make the argument that we're only playing with a third of the game, right? If we want to take special teams into effect, right? But we know how you feel about that. So theoretically, we're only playing and dipping our toes in half the game. And if we really truly wanted to be nerds about this and really be pioneers, with how we approach this, with like how our brains work and how we think about fantasy football, like IDP exists, people play it, but there's not a lot of content out there for it. People aren't really like digging deeply into how to be successful at these things. Like they're happening in the whispers. It's not mainstream yet, right? Or maybe it is, and I'm just like sheltered. But I think there's definitely
opportunity. I'm not sure.
If we wanted to dig in and mess around with that and find enough people that are interested in that, like I think we can put something together that helps us dip our toe and make it more accessible. Because you're right, I think it can get too complicated. But if you introduce like one flex position or two, and really drive value into certain metrics or certain ways to score points, like I think you could make people more willing to dip their toe into the defensive space. And then
I wonder if there's downside to that, like what other people have done. Like I wonder if there's downside to the flex, like if it takes away anything. I'm trying to imagine, like if I was a defensive only and then I added offensive, if I just said a super flex position, would it be like, oh well, everyone's going to put a quarterback in there and nothing else matters? Or like, does it take away from some of the nuance by only having a super flex version of defense, or are they more balanced, where you really could get a superstar of a different position or two? I'm wondering. I don't know enough about that to see if there's a position that skyrockets above everyone else, and then no other position would be drafted, and you might as well just have that be the position.
Yeah, I think it depends on how the point setup works, like how are tackles accounted for versus forced fumbles or takeaways or like what that all looks like, and if they all count for points. Like I said, I haven't dipped in enough, but I'm sure we can put all of that raw data exported from somewhere together and just really like figure out what's the most even way to score points. If you're only gonna have one position or one super flex position.
One question I want to ask you on, like I have it on for the next episode, but I am just curious. So I've been thinking about half point and full point PPR, and balancing out wide receiver versus running back and all that, and because I feel that in Dynasty, in regular fantasy football, running backs are like super valuable, and I feel that they're so invaluable in Dynasty, where I'm trying to think of ways to boost their importance. And what I was thinking of, and it was half point PPR instead of full point, but then you get a full point, or you get another half point for a first down, no matter the position.
Yeah. I've heard that. Yeah.
I think in general in fantasy, I'm starting to like the idea of that more than a full point PPR, where it's more fair to every position. It still rewards catches and pass catching running backs, but it also rewards the grinders that get that first down. I think that's the way it should move.
I can see that, because that's a good way to even it out. I think it will skew benefits to your short yardage backs. Like you start thinking about that, right? Because your all of your third and short running backs that you bring in, like those bruisers, like that depending on how you score it, whether it's an extra half point or extra point, it brings value to that position where maybe you're not thinking about that third down back or drafting that third down. But your Blake Corums, for instance, coming down the pipe or whatever, that puts a little bit more value in those spots.
What's the running back in Buffalo? The Davis they drafted or something like that? I think like that's going to be his position there.
Yeah. Ray Davis. Yeah. I've got my big board over here.
Nice.
Had it all set up, man. I think that's a good valid point that we got to figure out ways to rebalance out the scores, because I've heard also, like, with how heavy running back by committee is out there, is there an opportunity in some leagues, and I don't know how fun this would even be, to go away from like running back and just do team running back? Like I've heard that argument.
Whoa, I've never heard that.
Yeah, like just like you draft a team defense, you draft team running back.
I wonder how that works with when a wide receiver runs. Things like that.
I think I would assume it's positional, but I'm not sure.
That's interesting. I don't like it, but I don't know if it's because I don't like the change. I don't know where my emotion comes from.
Yeah, that's a drastic change. It's just something I've heard before, and I feel like I've discussed it. I think I actually talked this out with Nick one time, because Nick used to be commissioner. Me and him would go back commissioning a redraft league that kind of turned into his buddies in Arizona. But we talk about that every year because of how much the running back position has changed. Like, how do we edit this? And I think that came up one year. So when I say I've heard that before, it might have just been birthed out of a discussion between me and Nick. If I'm being honest.
Well, yeah, I haven't seen any points or settings to support it. So, but that's it's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting thought. I think there's merit in like the idea, but the actual functionality, I don't mind running backs in general being valued a little less, because you will have those superstars that are amazing, but it's not like tight end where you just have the superstars and then nothing. You have plenty of and that's why I do like half point PPR. It gives a little boost. It gives a lot of boost to wide receivers, but it also gives boost to different kinds of running backs. So I think the mixture between half point and then a half point first down gives enough where the wide receiver probably didn't lose anything, but the running back probably gains something.
Right.
And then gives a little bit more value to. It's not about giving it's what you're trying to do, I think, is in fantasy football is not like, this is why I'm not against. I just haven't fully adopted half or any tight end premium. It's because I'm not trying to give a premium point to the top people, because that's just boosting the top people, and I feel like that's what that does. What I'm trying to do is give balance to the position as a whole. So I don't feel like tight end premium does that. I think that the goal is to get to balance out the positions versus giving a position a boost. It's to even out that, and I think that's where the disparity in fantasy goes. And tight end premium, I don't think addresses it. It just gives a further disparity to the top people, anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to come up with the perfect scenario for the perfect scoring system to equally appreciate all positions that come through. Like, if you want to play a tight end premium league, that's because you want to work that part of your brain where you have to start to strategize how to draft your tight ends appropriately. I'm not against it per se, but I think in our league, I think there's a desire to, the fantasy football purists that are out there that want to keep it intentionally fair or whatever, or how you want to balance it out. But But there's something I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with the league discussion next week, because I think we can talk about the different types of leagues, but also talk about the different types of scoring potentially. Yeah. And I don't think we've mentioned like survival leagues, like where
that
the low.
Throw it in there. I threw Empire League in there because I thought, and that could be a quick cliff note, because I like the idea of this. I don't know if you read it all, but 50% of the pot goes to the winnings this year, and then 50% goes into a long-term pool that you don't get until someone wins 2 years in a row. So it could be 20 years in. Technically, it's Apple.
What just happened?
It could be 20. It could be 20 years in.
What is going on?
And you get that pool that has been half the year for all of it. So I think that's something that you could just add on to any league. But we can take that one out, and you can replace it with, what were you calling? What was it?
Survival League. I mean, it's not. It's been out there for a while, and some people love it, some people hate it. But like, it's every week, you're not playing against any individual team. Just the lowest scoring team that week is eliminated from the league, and then it goes on and on until there's only one league or one team left, or a couple teams, or however that works out.
I'm interested.
But every week, a team is eliminated from the league, so it's like you're just trying to survive. So when you draft your team, you're just like, you don't take a ton. Like, you draft a team that's going to not be the worst team in the league any given week, because the worst team in the league every week gets eliminated. So it's like,
I think we need to this is a good. I think that should be it, because I have a lot of questions. I'll ask one, and then we can save the rest, and you can like research and put in there. But like, what happens to their players?
So they hit the waiver wire.
Okay, so they
in that format.
Wow,
they're gone. Yeah, so their team hits the waiver wire.
So you're really banking on being okay for the first half of the season, knowing that you're gonna.
Yep.
But bad enough that unless you have Fab or something, but like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's the survival league concept that's out there, and I think that's a fun one to consider. But it sucks if you're eliminated week 2, and then you're like, oh, all right, well, that was fun, bye guys. Like,
yeah, but not if you're somebody who tries a bunch of different ones, and you're like, because that's who's trying that. It's not like I am in 3 leagues and one of them is survival. That goes to like,
that's my 15th league, right? Yeah.
Yeah, or even my 5th or 6th, and I think that'd be cool. I'm really excited about some interesting ones.
I've never done a best ball league. I know that's been out there for a while, but
I know
that's a thing.
I always think I'm done that. I'm in Dynasty this time of year, and then I go, oh yeah, best ball, but then your advantage is gone by now already. And I feel like it's a waste to do best ball, because your advantage is really like being on it with Dynasty, and you kind of can predict some of the stuff because you're listening when others aren't. So you draft in February and March and April maybe, and then you've got a huge advantage if you know your stuff. So next year, let's do a best ball
for sure. But anyway, yeah, this has been fun, man.